Hey, real quick, before we get into that episode, do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. That way you don't miss out on any marketing nuggets. Enjoy the show.
I think what is the unifying principle that could really help elevate the nonprofit scene in New Orleans and most places is support
Mm.
is support for staff. And I mean I don't mean support in like we need more FTE support. I mean that community of like-minded people that you can
Yeah.
just call up and say like, do we pay into state unemployment tax?
Hi, I'm Josh Owen. As the owner of a video marketing company in New Orleans, I've been on the quest to learn everything I can about marketing. Everyone has a different style, different strategy, and a different experience. Is there a wrong way to do it? A right way to do it? Let's find out together as we make marketing make sense. Welcome, everybody, to another fantastic episode of Make Marketing Make Sense. Today I'm joined by the lovely Laila Bondi. She's the executive director of Global New Orleans, which is a fantastic organization. I mean, I did not even know. I mean, I love internationalism and just globalism, and I guess, in the best senses of just like meeting cultures and learning about cultures. So it's fantastic to know about your organization. Well, thank you for joining me, I should say.
Thank you for having me on the show. I'm so
Yeah,
excited.
Exactly. And today we're going to talk, and I think what's cool about today is we've had a lot of different executive directors of nonprofits come on the show and talk about, different things from what they've done here or, how to do this or how they started this. But what we're going to talk about today, which I think is really unique, is really talk about your experience kind of becoming an ED from no experience of being an ED to really hearing about what that experience is like and just get a firsthand take, like, for other people knowing like, hey, this is what it's like to step into this role, this leadership role. So I'm excited to talk about that.
I'm excited to talk about it too.
Well, to start with, what was, what was your situation kind of getting into it? Like how did it all come to be as you became the ED of this organization?
Yeah, I was actually I've been in nonprofit work for my entire career, in various capacities, but most recently, I worked in public health for 15 years before this, and when this opportunity came up, I was so interested because, like everybody, as you said, everybody's interested in learning about other cultures and international travel and those kinds of things. So, of course, that appealed to me. But I was at a place in my organization where the organization was growing rapidly, except senior leadership was not growing with it. And one of the things that I think is so important about being an effective leader is the ability to change and to be reflexive and flexible. So that was not happening where I was. And this came up and I thought, what an exciting opportunity to be the leader of an organization that is changing in this globalized world. So I had no idea what I was taking on. I thought, I've been doing nonprofit administration for years, even though I wasn't the executive director. I've been involved. I've done various aspects of it, from grant management to project management, et cetera. But ED is a whole new wild ride.
Yeah, what was that? Because what was it like going from looking at it from outside the glass and then stepping inside and being inside of the whole experience? Like, what has it been like learning being the ED of this organization?
Yeah, I had no idea that I would also be the head of marketing, communications, HR, development, program, all those things.
Yeah.
With a small nonprofit, even though I've worked in nonprofits for my whole career, I've never worked in such a small nonprofit. So we're 3 staff, which means that we're small but mighty. We do incredible things, but I was very naive to think because our budget was small. I came from an organization where I was managing 15 to 20 budgets, several $1,000,000, and I thought, just one grant? This is so easy. It's not easy. So that was a little bit naive of me, and I learned quickly that I was going to have to wear a lot of different hats. The other thing was that I started out with not a lot of the organization's been around for years, but it's changed a lot over the years. It's had to change. I mean, everything has to change.
Yeah.
But especially because of COVID, I think that was some really rapid acceleration of change. So when I started, it was sort of like starting from, I shouldn't say ground zero. The people there before me were doing amazing things too. But we really had a lot of work ahead of us. So the best thing that I did was get in touch with the Greater New Orleans Foundation and say, please help me. And they accepted me into their cohort. They do an executive director intensive every year. And so I was in a cohort of about 25 different leaders of other amazing organizations in the area. And so the content that we learned was so important. The trainers that we had were incredible. But really, what was the best part about it was plugging into this network of mission-driven people. So it's sort of like our own little support group.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. And so you guys still stay in touch today?
Yeah, a lot. Actually, so Common House, where we're both members, I was there last weekend enjoying the pool because sometimes you need to take some self-care time.
Classic.
Yep.
That's
And
best case use.
exactly. So I ran into two other executive directors, and
Wow.
we said, "Do we need to form like a Friday afternoon pool for the executive directors?"
There's a lot
So
of nonprofit leadership in Common House.
it's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
So it's not, I mean, I say that flippantly, like,
Yeah.
oh, we need a pool club for executive
Yeah.
directors. But really, I mean, I think that sense of community that we're building there and that we're sharing, I think that was the best thing that I've done to propel myself on this journey was a strong sense of community and support.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people take for granted is how much, it takes a village.
It can be very lonely being an ED. So yes, I would definitely recommend anybody who wants to embark on that, make sure you're set up for success by connecting with other people who are doing similar work. And I'm a big proponent of coaching. I think it's so interesting that we ran into someone in the lobby today who was a leadership coach. I think that is a great way. I mean, if you don't have a cohort of other EDs that get a leadership coach, and they can be that support while you're building your network.
That's awesome. And I'm kind of curious too, mindset wise, like, you jumped into this thing thinking it was going to be easy, and then you realized it wasn't the thing that you thought it was. What kept you from just saying like, hey, I gotta just, this isn't for me?
Oof. Well, have you ever played a puzzle and it's like strands? I don't know if you play strands. I play Wordle. I play Connections.
Okay. Yeah.
They challenge my brain, and I feel satisfied when I've completed them. Strands. I don't know if you've played it. It's not satisfying. It's not satisfying. It's too easy.
I'm gonna look it up. I'm gonna look it up.
So I guess that's a similar way that I felt it was so satisfying, and I have done great things in my career before, but the highs that I've been able to achieve in this job have been so exhilarating, and it is. I guess I hate to use the word addictive, but in a way, it really it's so gratifying to see the fruits of your labor. So I think that's what keeps me going. Is just how incredible the rewards can be with the effort that comes from it.
Well, and also bringing up like how so many like executive directors in the nonprofit world that you've met through your journeys and the just in general. What do you feel like from your perspective being in the trenches? What do you feel like not like the nonprofit scene is kind of missing right now? Like, what do we feel like?
Money. No, I'm kidding.
I mean, there's a lot of nonprofits.
There's a lot of nonprofits that are doing not necessarily similar, maybe similar, but mostly complementary work. And we're all working so hard to keep ourselves going, and we're missing that. So I give a lot of props to the Greater New Orleans Foundation and other organizations that are helping to build these connections between people, because I think, yes, we need more money. Yes, we need more staff, those kinds of things. But really, I think what is the unifying principle that could really help elevate the nonprofit scene in New Orleans and most places is support. Is support for staff. And I mean, I don't mean support in like we need more FTE support. I mean that community of like-minded people that say, when you say, gosh, I didn't know that I had to file my 990 and whatever, any of these questions, I come up with things all the time that I don't even know who to turn to ask. And New Orleans and Louisiana have such unique ecosystems that it's important that you have people locally that you can just call up and say, like, do we pay into state unemployment tax?
Yeah, interesting. Because that's so funny. Because I feel like a lot of it's almost like you're the executive director. You should feel alone. It's like, but that shouldn't be the case. You should be the one at the top, and you should know all the answers. It's like you're almost like it's like, but clearly you learned that you didn't know the answers.
No, I did not. And I think that's one of the things. Well, first of all, when I started, I had some incredible staff who, oh man, when you're hiring, I mean, they were already there, but when you're hiring, I realized a long time ago to hire people that have different strengths than I do. So my strengths are not in IT and social media and things like that. So luckily, I have a staff that is younger and wiser than me in so many ways, and they're knocking it out of the park with that in ways that I can't advise them on. I can say what my vision is and what I want us to project, but they can execute it, which is.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying it's amazing to have people that have those complementary skills on a team.
I was gonna, because that's what I'm curious about is how, were there any things that they taught you or that you learned from the other people? What were the biggest things that you felt like pushed the needle in your leadership? You know, what were the things that you
Mm.
felt like really progressed the nonprofit forward? In the time that you've been there, I guess the things that made the biggest progress. Like, what were the things that you learned or maybe like you implemented in this time that really made the biggest impacts?
Mm. Well, I think part of that is definitely knowing the strengths of your team and
Mm,
talking to your team all the time about, sometimes you might say, okay, we want this person to focus on this or this person to focus on that. Or the way I like to do things, I'm into this like collaborative leadership model,
mm,
which means there's no hierarchy and everybody can do everything. But really, when it comes to
mm,
that actually playing out, some people are better at certain things than
mm,
others, and some people like certain things better than others.
mm.
So even though I want us all to do social media, like, oh, everybody does one post a week, there's somebody who doesn't like doing it,
Yeah,
and there's somebody who loves doing it.
yeah,
So learning from each other and being able to communicate, like, hey, I really hate doing social media,
yeah.
and saying, great, let's focus. Maybe you would rather focus more on the event side of
Mm,
things. And the social media person saying, I don't like all the logistical stuff.
mm,
Can I just focus on what I
mm-hmm,
like? So that learning to take capacity of my own strengths and the things that I've enjoyed doing, as well as the rest of my team, I think has been absolutely vital
mm.
to us growing and moving forward and getting to where we are now.
Do you think that there's like a, I guess, as you've been on this journey, what do you think was like the most critical skill that you needed to pick up to like make yourself the most effective you could be?
Mm, I'm still learning it, but
As I hope, we're all
yeah,
learning,
yes. Oh,
but
always.
yeah, but it's like at the top of your radar that really like you were like, oh, I've got to do this, or that you were told that like this is important.
I think it's this the art of listening
Mm,
um, is I hear when I'm talking with my team how much I'm talking,
mm,
and I have to remind myself, and I still do, that we all need to bring our voices to the table. So
mm,
to I am the director and I should be leading, but I should also let my team lead me.
mm.
So that's been something that is really important.
Yeah.
Also, humility. I mean, accepting that for myself and for my colleagues that we're all human. We all make mistakes. It's
Mm,
okay, but we need to pick it up instead of explaining why we
mm,
didn't do something the way we wanted to. Thinking about how we might use that as a way to change it up.
mm. That's awesome. I mean, I think too, how do you like have you, because you mentioned like coaching and stuff like that, have you kind of like were there resources that you kind of got outside of the New Orleans Foundation?
Interestingly, I went through my own year-long coaching certification, and I was right
Oh.
before I started this job. I was actually planning to launch my own coaching
Oh,
business,
wow.
but the have being an executive director of an organization is really kind of takes it's like having a baby. I mean, it really
Mm-hmm.
takes up your most of your time and
Mm-hmm.
your energy. So I put that on hold. But I happen to have an amazing cohort of colleagues
Mm.
who were in the coaching world who helped me in the beginning.
Wow. And so you were able to like kind of like propel forward because of that.
Hmm.
Did you feel like I guess with like other EDs that you've talked to and you've been learning from, do you feel like the size of an organization is reflective of how of an organization's importance, or like where because a lot of like I think with a lot of nonprofits it's almost like they're afraid to expand because they're almost afraid of like adding more reasons and more resources and more people to manage, like where do you stand on like the growth of your
Yeah.
organization?
You know, that's funny. I remember this may be a little bit of a segue, but I remember when I was a little kid thinking, when you would hear about population decline, and
Mm,
always wondered, why is that a bad thing? I mean, having fewer people in your city or like, I don't know
yeah.
if I think that's it. I also don't think that the goal of my organization or most organizations, I don't know why the goal is to get bigger.
Mm,
Does that mean you're doing more quality work? Does that mean you're compensating your staff better? I mean, if that's the case, sure. But just for the point of being bigger, I'm not sure that I think that is relevant. Um, so that's my like very high level answer.
yeah.
But you can guess that my answer for the organization is that no, I don't think that we need to get bigger necessarily. I wish we were more of a household name in New Orleans. I wish people,
Mm,
when I say Global New Orleans, people always say, "Ooh, what is that?" And they want to know more. But I
Yeah.
wish they would say, "Ooh, Global New Orleans, we hosted one of your fellows who came through
Mm,
last year."
mm,
And so I do wish that we were more recognized for what we do.
mm,
But yeah, I think we do incredible things. Last week, 2 weeks ago, we hosted a summit with 200 people from all over the country and local attendees. It was at Gallier Hall, and I knew our national attendees would love whatever we put on. They were
mm,
just happy to be in New Orleans, and they were blown away. But the local attendees were like, "Wow, I didn't know y'all
mm,
existed. I didn't know that y'all were connected to the State Department. I didn't
mm.
know, all these things." So, the event that we were able to pull off is proof to me that we don't necessarily need a bigger staff. We just
Mm,
need to continue nourishing those community connections that we
mm.
have, so that we're all working together. Which I
Yeah.
think kind of speaks to that other thing that you were saying about EDs. That or about nonprofits. What do we need?
Yeah.
We just need to be nourishing these relationships
Yeah.
more.
And I guess that's a good point is like, do you feel like there's just that, like the climate right now is just like, there almost seems like in every industry that there needs to be a connector that exists that is just like their sole job is to just continue to expand those connections.
Yeah, well, I mean, ideally, like when I met you at the Common House, or
Yeah.
the other day I met with we have two fellows who are being hosted by local organization Cafecito de Honduras, and
Oh,
yeah,
no
Enrique,
way.
yeah.
Yeah. Enrique's doing that. That's
Yes,
awesome.
and the Philippine Americans Women Association of Louisiana. And so I sat down with them, and the connections that were sparking, and we were talking about restaurant owners that we knew and running clubs that were in common. I mean, those kinds of connections are the kinds of connections that I need to be making all the time.
Mm.
There's a lot of administrative things that I need to do
Yeah.
too, but that's the kind of thing that I really want to be doing more of.
That's awesome.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I mean, I think a great way to kind of like sum up everything here is I'd love to know, and for the audience out there, for any leaders, but specifically nonprofit leaders, what advice to other, starting nonprofit leaders would you give to them as they start? What would you say, to those people?
Maintain your balance, because it's very easy to get thrown off balance, I guess. But it's very easy, I mean, to think, when you're in charge of an organization, you're responsible for everything. And we all want to do well, and we all want to take care of our team, and we all want to make sure that our funders are happy, and
Mm,
and to know that you can't do everything. I actually had a boss years ago who told me a great thing that still sticks with me. And at the time, I was sort of hurt when he said it to me, because I wanted to get everything done and I wanted to do
yeah.
everything perfectly. And he said, "Layla, you're just not that important." And I was like,
Wow.
"Ah." And he said, "No, what I mean is," he was like, "when you leave, somebody else is going to do this job.
Mm,
Like, the world goes on. So
yeah.
you can make yourself crazy by working so hard, or
Mm,
you can realize that you got to close it down for the day, and there'll be another day to get
mm,
your work
mm,
done." So I that sticks with me, that maybe not that you're not that important, but that the world does not revolve around whether or not you get these things done. The
mm.
world goes on. So stop making it the most important thing in the world. And it's hard not to do that, especially as a
Yeah.
new ED, because you want to prove
Prove
yourself to your
yourself.
community
Yeah.
and your board.
You
And
got all these people, yeah, looking
exactly.
at you. And it's
Hmm.
like, and I guess too, well, speaking of importance, like what hierarchy of do you put in of your importance, like when you mentioned like funders, internal team, organization,
Team.
team first.
Team first.
Team first.
I mean, I don't know if I think of it as a hierarchy. I think of it more of a stool.
Hmm.
But when I think about which stool leg I prioritize, it's my
It's to
team.
build up the team.
Hmm.
And did that change over the time period that you were
Never.
there?
Mm-mm.
It's always been your team.
It's
I like
always,
it.
and the
Yeah.
same thing when I was at my former job. The thing that I loved most about it was the team that I was able to build and
Mm,
and promote and sustain.
mm,
So team always, definitely community. I mean, we rely on our community resources to connect with our visitors when they're here. So we could not do the work we do without them at all. But we couldn't even get to those community resources if we didn't have a strong team.
that's awesome.
Yeah, and then the funders. I mean, they're
Mm,
obviously important, and they're
yeah.
great partners. But
Yeah.
yeah. So I think, okay, maybe I do have a hierarchy.
And it's all come out here. No, that's great. Well, no, I mean that's why we ask the questions, and I think, well, okay. So last thing, since we're talking about community and connectors and people and continuing the nonprofit connection, if there was one nonprofit you could shout out that's not your own, because you'll shout your own nonprofit out, but if there's one nonprofit you could shout out that people should know about, what nonprofit would you say?
Oh man, there's so many. Well, I'm gonna shout out Voice of the Experience.
Ooh.
Um, I don't know if you're familiar.
No, I don't know.
It goes also by the acronym VOTE. It was started by Norris Henderson, who was formerly incarcerated for 27 years for a crime he didn't commit. And so when he got out, he wanted to help people who were in the same situation as him, but not just that. I mean, he wanted to make sure that people who are in communities where they don't feel like their vote matters, to say that your vote does matter. And that's not something, when people are just getting out of prison, that's not necessarily, registering to vote is not necessarily the first thing that they think about. They're thinking about housing and a job. And so vote helps with all of those things, but they also help people to register to vote, and they do community campaigns. They did something last year that I thought was so clever when it was the commissioner of, what was it? Devontae Lewis. What is he? The public service commissioner. Well, they did Vote did a community campaign to, raise awareness about how he was up against this guy who'd been the incumbent, who'd been there for 27 years and was representing the powers that be, and promoting Devontae Lewis as this newcomer who was prioritizing the community. And not only did they do that in the general community, but because they work with prisons and with prison populations, they also did a campaign inside prisons. And they said, the public service commissioner, they set the rates for phone calls between family members and their loved ones who are incarcerated. And so to say, like, tell your people on the outside to vote, because this directly impacts the rates to be able to stay in touch with your family when you're in jail.
That is wild.
So I was like, that is so powerful and so clever. And by the way, Devontae Lewis won. So I think they did a great job.
I guess that pushed the needle. If there's anything. That's wild. That's awesome. Well, fantastic. I was some little extra I just thought I'd throw in there. So now, tell people, where they can get involved with Global New Orleans, and if anything they might want to know about it.
Wonderful. Yeah. Global New Orleans, you can find us online, www.globalneworleans.org, not .com. We facilitate international professional exchange programs through the State Department, and we've been doing it for 80 years. And our mission, and this is probably why, I've worked for nonprofits my whole career, like I said, but this mission to foster collaboration on a global level is it's so beautiful, and it's so needed. Like we were talking at the top of this, that all the things going on in this world, to be able to understand people on a personal and individual level is so important, and I get to do that every day. And people can get involved in Global New Orleans. We have monthly networking events. Often our international visitors are there. We bring fellows here that they come for a month at a time, and we place them with professional hosts. So it's essentially like getting an emerging leader who's part of your staff for a month, which is super exciting. We have a cohort of 14 coming next May, and we'll be starting to recruit organizations to host them all over the next 6 months. So that's an exciting way to be involved with us too. Sign up for our newsletter. You'll hear all about our networking events and fellowship opportunities. You can host one of the international visitors in your home for dinner. The opportunities are endless.
Wow, love it. Get involved, because there's so much wonderful networking to be had, and so many great people from all over the world to be met. So,
absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having me.
This has been another fantastic episode. And it was all because of you. Laila Bondi, Global New Orleans, ED. This is Make Marketing Make Sense. We'll see you all in the next one.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into the show. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. This episode of Make Marketing Make Sense is brought to you by Comfystone. If your business needs organic social media video content, video ads, or video podcasting, hit up Comfystone at comfystone.com and follow Comfystone on Instagram and TikTok. Until next time, this is Make Marketing Make Sense.